lead off with a man that makes me proud to wear this hoodie. Stephen freaking Curry. I use this with Sexton. I'm going to use the same model. He has been going off recently. The Davidson Pride and Joy has been scorching. 8 straight games with 27-plus points. He's averaging 35.3 points a game on 56.2% shooting and 47.5% from three over that span. And on the season, he's averaging 30 points flat, 5.5 rebounds, 5.9 assists. I saw a tweet that compared the numbers between this season and his 2016 unanimous MVP season, and they are virtually identical. It is scary. Joe, that's prompting some questions because obviously, right, the Warriors 14-12, 8th in the West, competing for a playoff spot. They look like they're capable of getting it, but probably not winning an actual playoff series. And they're definitely capable of winning a play-in tournament. And Joe, the number one thing I got to ask you is, despite all this, with the way Steph is playing, do you think he is a legitimate MVP candidate? And where does he rank on that scale for you?
I mean, yeah, he's a legitimate MVP candidate. I mean, he was already top 10 before the insane stretch of games. This is just, moving him up the list. So, yeah, he's an MVP candidate. That's the answer to that question.
All right. Do you have any more detail on this? Where does he rank on that scale?
Steph Curry, honestly, I mean, he's playing great. I think he could definitely be, top 5 MVP candidate right now. I think, I wouldn't be surprised if people put him at 6 or 7. But I mean, I have him in my top 3 right now at the moment. It is, of course, subject to change. I'm not like the voters, and I, change by how the year progresses. But yeah, top 3. I mean, I think Embiid is still up there, and I also think Jokic is still up there, but he's declining on me because he is falling on my list, I should say.
Yeah. I think he won't win MVP just because the Warriors aren't good enough. And I think that's the conclusion.
Then why would you ask the question?
But he should. That's why I'm asking the question. Steph Curry should be number 1 in MVP voting right now. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The Golden State Warriors were flaming hot trash without him last season. The only change between last season and this season's roster dramatically, besides the addition of Wiseman, is Steph Curry. He's been playing out of his mind. The numbers are on par with that 2016 MVP campaign. This dude has been going on an insane stretch. He's almost single-handedly kept his team in these games. And I know basketball is a team sport, but we saw what happened when they didn't have Steph Curry, they didn't have Klay Thompson, and they fell off a map last year. The only change besides Wiseman is Steph Curry. And Steph Curry, I think, increases the effectiveness of Wiseman because of how they run the pick and roll together in the pace and space, which opens up room for Wiseman to do all the stuff he likes to do. So I think there is no question Steph Curry should be the MVP, but I don't think he will be. Obviously, you have Joel Embiid, who's having an incredible season, not taking anything away from him. He's the most important player on that Sixers team. Yes, he has some very good teammates, so let's not put that out of perspective, but he's been great. And of course, LeBron James. I think LeBron James is up there in that conversation. Jokic will be in that conversation as well. I mean, we saw what LeBron's done over the past couple of games, not single-handedly, but hitting massive shot after massive shot, making clutch play after clutch play in overtime wins over teams they probably should have beaten in regulation, but to each their own, whatever. But I say Steph Curry. If we're talking about valuable implies that if you are lost from your team will be nowhere. There's only one team in the NBA that would be nowhere without their best player in terms of playoff contention, and that is the Warriors and Stephen Curry. So I think that in my eyes, he should be MVP, but because of obviously the practicalities of it and how they decide it, he won't. But that's my hot take of the week. I think Steph Curry.
That's the dumbest reason ever.
What'd you say?
That's the dumbest reason ever. Okay.
Dumbest reason.
First of all, come on. He is the most valuable player on the team. Yeah, I agree with you on that, but that's not what MVP is anymore.
But that's what I'm saying should be.
Yeah. Also, I mean, because LeBron wouldn't even be on, top 3 if it wasn't most valuable player on your team.
I still
because
think he would be
they
how
could
poorly
they
Davis
could
scored.
get in the playoffs with AD if LeBron got hurt.
Yeah, but here's the logic of this, right? With the Lakers, the reason why LeBron's even in this discussion is for one, obviously he's been, in my opinion, screwed
It's
at
because
numerous awards.
it's because he's LeBron.
He's the best player in the world. He's playing at an incredibly high clip. And also, the fact is, without LeBron, the Lakers wouldn't be near the title conversation. And there are actual debates over whether with AD they would be in the playoffs. I think they would be comfortably. I think AD is a legitimate superstar. I think he's top 5 player in the league. I don't think those are even really debatable points at this point. But what I will
But I'll
say,
debate them.
but what I will say here is that if we are talking valuable, and this is something that we've talked about on this show and in general for years now, if we are talking about most valuable player in the league, you lose him, your team falls apart, it's Stephen Curry. And
yeah,
that's my point. Even though he's never going to win it, and that's not what MVP is decided on, he should, because those numbers are insane. We're seeing that he is putting teams on his back and carrying. And there wasn't much difference in turnover between last year and this year. You see Stephen Curry's direct effect. This should be obvious. And that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, Joe. The big question here, obviously the Warriors still in playoff contention, almost certainly will be at least in the play-in tournament. Joe, do you think this Warriors team is a playoff team? For one, because obviously that's still kind of up in the air. And two, do you think that Steph can sustain this form, given the workload on him, given how much effort he has to put in every single night out there? Do you think he can sustain that over this 70-something game season and keep the Warriors in this playoff? Because obviously the Warriors are going to go how Steph goes. We've already seen that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they can make the playoffs for sure. I think it doesn't. I don't think it depends on Curry.
Really?
Like, I mean, he's the most valuable player on that team. If they make it to the playoffs, it's going to be because of him, but it doesn't depend on him.
Facts.
It depends on Oubre and Wiggins.
True.
Right? Because I mean, Warriors looked like last year's Warriors when Wiggins and Oubre weren't doing crap at the beginning of the season. And I mean, like, they need to actually play, especially Oubre. I mean, he needs to be playing better than he is right now.
Yeah, and I will say the thing about Oubre is he's definitely picked up the slack since the way he started. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about the historic shooting slump and all the struggles the Warriors face. You talk about Andrew Wiggins just looking lackluster and not being able to hit a three and all this stuff. And Oubre had the historically bad 3-point percentage to start. He's gotten better. I remember there was one game a few weeks ago, he had 7 threes and everyone was freaking out about that. Wiggins has been surprisingly decent and like more consistent as this number 2-ish, 3-ish option. I think you're right on that point. I think the supporting cast needs to step up because you can't expect, my point is, over the course of the season, yes, Steph is having an incredible stretch and he's been pretty consistent throughout the year, but he is going to have some ups and downs. Like, it's impossible to sustain this high a level with that much workload on you for an entire 70-something games. And in certain games, you're going to need a guy like Oubre or a guy like Wiggins or a guy like Wiseman to take over at times because of the attention on Steph Curry. And that's what was the problem was at the beginning of the year, as you've alluded to. So I do agree with you on that. I think that this definitely is dependent on how the supporting cast steps up. I think the biggest kind of important thing I will say is they need Wiseman to be healthy throughout the year. Wiseman adds a new dimension to that front court. Obviously, he offers some scoring punch. He has a bit of range as well. He can hit from the free throw line and even beyond. He can handle a bit as well. Guy's really athletic. And obviously, the defense, we've talked about the problems with the Warriors, but Wiseman's a good rim protector, and he helps them around the paint. So I think for me, when we're evaluating the Warriors, you're right to bring up the supporting cast. You're right to mention Oubre and Wiggins. But I also am going to say Wiseman's health is a major factor. And if he can stay healthy throughout the campaign, that's going to be huge for the Warriors. Hey, y'all. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you want to see our last video, click here. If you want to see our next video, click here. And if you want to subscribe, click on my face.